May our Father, Messiah, Holy Spirit be with us. Father willing, we will finish Ezekiel today. Um, Use something in the background. I'll be fine with my notes too. Letting everybody else make sure you guys take care of yourself. So, may our Father, Son, and Spirit be with us. He then led them into the great hall. He measured the jambs 6 cubits on either side. And one thing I noticed while I was reading this, my father having literally measured Jerusalem, because this is where our Father wants his throne, so this is where our Father will put his throne. And if you peep, Ezekiel was like low key. It's like a revelation in a sense. Like before the revelation, if you read it, like if you read Ezekiel and read Revelation, like how he ate the book and all these things, this just lets you know that our Father heaven never changes, and that he just the way that he operates, he's just a beautiful, wonderful El. Yeah, so may our Father, Son, and Spirit be with us. He then led me into the great hall. He measured the jambs, 6 cubits on either side. Such was the depth of each jamb. The entrance was 10 cubits wide, and the flanking walls of the entrance were each 5 cubits wide. Next he measured the depth of the hall, 40 cubits, and the width, 20 cubits, and then he entered the inner room. He measured each jamb of the entrance 2 cubits deep, the entrance itself 6 cubits, and across, and the width of the flanking wall on either side of the entrance 7 cubits. Then he measured the depth 20 cubits, and the width at the inner end of the great hall was also 20 cubits. And he said to me, "This is the Holy of Holies." Then he measured the wall of the temple. It was 6 cubits thick on every side of the temple, and the side chamber measured 4 cubits across. The side chambers were arranged one above the other in 33 sections all around. There were projections in the temple, wall to wall. There were projections in the temple wall to serve the side chambers as supports, so that their supports should not be the temple wall itself. The winding passage of the side chambers widened from story to story, and since the structure was furnished all over with winding passages from story to story, the structure itself became wider from story to story. It was by this means that one ascended from the bottom story to the top one by way of the middle one. I observed that the temple was surrounded by a raised pavement. The foundations of the side chambers, its elevation was a rod's length, or 6 cubits. The outer wall of the side chamber was 6 cubits, was 5 cubits thick, and that which served as a walk between the temple's side chambers and the chamber complexes was 20 cubits wide all around the temple. Of entrances to the side chambers giving on the wall, there was no entrance on the north side and one entrance on the south side, and the space of the wall was 5 cubits thick all around. And the structure that fronted on the vacant space at the temple's western end was 70 cubits deep. The walls of the structure were 5 cubits thick on every side, and it was 90 cubits wide. He measured the total depth of the temple, 100 cubits, and the depth of the vacant space and of the structure with its walls also came to 100 cubits. The front side of the temple, like the vacant space on the east, was 100 cubits wide. He also measured the width of the structure facing the vacant space in the rear, inclusive of his ledges, 100 cubits. Both the great hall inside and the portico next to the court, the thresholds and the windows with frames, and the ledges at the threshold all over the 3 parts of each were completely overlaid with the wood. There was wainscoting from the floor to the windows, including the window frames, and extending above the openings, both in the inner temple and outside, and all over the wall, both in the inner one and in the outer one. And in the outer ran a pattern. It consisted of cherubs and palm trees, with a palm tree between every 2 cherub. Each cherub had 2 faces, a human face turned toward the palm tree on either side, toward the palm tree on one side, and the lion's face toward the palm tree on the other side. This was repeated all over the temple. The cherubs and the palm trees were carved on the wall from the floor to above the openings As regards the great hall had four doorposts, and the shrine was something before the shrine was something resembling a wooden altar 3 cubits high and 2 cubits long, and having inner corners, and its length and its walls were of wood. And he said to me, "This is the table that stands before our Father in heaven." The great hall had a double door, and the shrine likewise had a double door, and each door had two swinging leaves, two for the one door, and two such leaves for the other. Cherubs and palm trees were carved on the doors of the hall, just as they were carved on the walls. And there was a lattice of wood outside the front of the portico, and there were windows with frames and palm trees on the flanking walls of the portico on either side of the entrance, and on the temple. I just stepped on this right now. And on the temple side chambers, and on the lattices. He took me out by way of the northern gate into the outer court, and he led me westward up to a complex of chambers that ran parallel to the northern ends of the vacant space. And the structure, the width of its facade, its north side, the one from which it was entered, was 100 cubits, and its depth was 50 cubits. At right angles to the 20 cubits of the inner court, into the pavement of the outer court, the complex rose ledge by ledge in 3 tiers. There was an areaway 10 cubits wide, and a road of 1 cubit running along the inner court side of the chamber complex. But its entrances were on its north side. Here its upper chambers were cut back, because ledges took away from them as construction proceeded backward from the bottom ones, and then from the middle ones, for they were arranged in 3 tiers, and they had no columns like those of the chambers in the courts. That is why the rise proceeded by stages from the ground, from the bottom ones, and from the middle ones. In the outer court, a wall 50 cubits long ran parallel to the chamber complex of the chambers in the outer court. But the chambers in the outer court were themselves 50 cubits deep, thus completing 100 cubits. Alongside the edifice, thus at the foot of that complex of chambers ran a passage of a width set by the wall in the outer court, which one entered from the east in order to gain access to them. From the outer court there was another chamber complex to the east of the vacant space in the structure, likewise with a passage in front, just like the complex on the north side, with which this one agreed in width and depth, and in the exact layout of its exits and entrances. Accordingly, the entrances to the chamber complex on the south side were approached from the east by the entrance at the head of the corresponding passage along the matching wall. And he said to me, "The northern chambers and the southern chambers by the vacant space are the consecrated chambers in which the priests who have access to our Father in heaven shall eat the most holy offerings. There they shall deposit the most holy offerings, the meal offerings, the sin offerings, and the guilt offerings. For the place is consecrated. When the priests enter, they shall not proceed from the consecrated place to the outer court without first leaving here the vestments in which they minister. For the vestments are consecrated before proceeding to the area." When the priests enter, they shall not proceed from the consecrated place to the outer court without first leaving here the vestments in which they minister, for the vestments are consecrated. Before proceeding to the area open to the people, they shall put on other garments. When he had finished the measurements of the inner temple area, he led me out by way of the gate which faces east, and he measured off the entire area. He measured the east side with the measuring rod, 500 cubits in rods by the measuring rod. He turned and measured the north side, 500 cubits in rods by the measuring rod. He turned and measured the south side, 500 cubits in rods by the measuring rod. Then he turned to the west side and measured it 500 cubits in rods by the measuring rod. Thus he measured it on the 4 sides. It had a wall completely surrounding it, 500 cubits long on each side, to separate the consecrated from the unconsecrated. Then he led me to a gate, the gate that faced east, and there coming from the east, with a roar like the roar of mighty waters, was the presence of the Elohim Israel. And the earth was lit up by his presence. The vision was like the vision I had seen when I came to destroy the city, the very same vision that I had seen by the Chebar Ganah. Forthwith I fell on my face, the presence of our Father in heaven, entered the temple by the gate that faced eastward. The Spirit carried me into the inner court, and lo, the presence of our Father in heaven filled the temple. And I heard speech addressed to me from the temple, though the man was standing beside me. It said to me, "O mortal, this is the place of my throne, and the place for the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the people where I will dwell in the midst of the people Israel forever. The house of Israel and their kings must not again defile my holy name by their apostasy and by the corpses of their kings at their death. When they placed their threshold next to my threshold and their doorpost next to my doorpost, with only a wall between me and them, they would defile my holy name by the abominations that they committed. And I consumed them in my anger. Therefore let them put their apostasy and the corpses of their kings far from me, and I will dwell among them forever. Now you, O mortal, describe the temple to the house of Israel, and let them measure its design. Let them be ashamed of their iniquities. When they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the plan of the temple and its layout, its exits and entrances, its entire plan, and all the laws and instructions pertaining to its entire plan. Write it down before their eyes, that they may faithfully follow its entire plan and all its laws. Such are the instructions for the temple. On top of the mountain, the entire area of its enclosure shall be most holy. Thus far the instructions for the temple, and these are the dimensions of the altar in cubits, where each is a cubit and a hand breadth. The trench shall be a cubit deep and a cubit wide, with the rim 1 span high around its edge, and the height shall be as follows: from the trench in the ground to the lower edge, which shall be a cubit wide, 2 cubits from the lower ledge to the upper ledge, which shall likewise be a cubit wide, 4 cubits in the height of. And the altar hearth shall be 4 cubits, with 4 horns projecting upward from the hearth, 4 cubits. Now the hearth shall be 12 cubits long and 12 broad, square, with 4 equal sides. Hence the upper base shall be 14 cubits broad, with 4 equal sides. The surrounding rim shall be half a cubit high, and the surrounding trench shall measure 1 cubit, and the rim shall face east. Then he said to me, O mortal, thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, these are the directions for the altar on the day it is erected, so that burnt offerings may be offered up on it, and blood dashed against it you shall give to the Levitical priests, who are of the stock of Zadok, and so eligible to minister to me. Declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, a young bull of the herd for a sin offering. You shall take some of its blood and apply to the 4 horns of the altar, to the 4 corners of the base, and to the surrounding rim. Thus you shall purge it and perform purification upon it. Then you shall take the bull of sin offering and burn it in the designated area of the temple outside the sanctuary. On the final day you shall offer a goat without blemish as a sin offering, and the altar shall be purged with it, just as it was purged with the bull. When you have completed the ritual of purging, you shall offer a bull of the herd without blemish, and a ram of the flock without blemish. Offer them to our Father in heaven. Let the priest throw salt on them, and offer them up as a burnt offering to our Father in heaven. Every day for 7 days you shall present a goat of sin offering, as well as a bull of the herd and a ram of the flock. You shall present unblemished ones. 7 days they shall purge the altar and cleanse it. Thus shall it be consecrated. And when these days are over, then from the 8th day onward, the priest shall offer your burnt offerings and your offerings of well-being on the altar, and I will extend my favor to you, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. Then he led me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary that faced eastward. It was shut, and our Father in heaven said to me, This gate is to be kept shut and is not to be opened. No one shall enter by it, because our Father in heaven, Elohim, Israel, has entered by it. Therefore it shall remain shut. Only the prince may sit in it and eat bread before our Father in heaven. Since he is prince, he shall enter by way of the vestibule of the gate, and shall depart by the same way. Then he led me by way of the north gate to the front of the temple. I looked, and lo, the presence of our Father in heaven filled the temple of our Father in heaven. And I fell upon my face. Then our Father in heaven said to me, O mortal, mark well, look closely, and listen carefully to everything that I tell you regarding all the laws of the temple of our Father in heaven, and all the instructions regarding it. Know well who may enter the temple, and all who must be excluded from the sanctuary. And say to the rebellious house of Israel, Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, too long, O house of Israel, have you committed all your abominations, omitting aliens, uncircumcised of spirit, and uncircumcised of flesh, to be in my sanctuary, and profane my very temple. When you offer up my food, the fat and the blood, you have broken my covenant with all your abominations. You have not discharged the duties concerning my sacred offerings, but have appointed them to discharge the duties of my sanctuary for you. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, let no alien uncircumcised in spirit and flesh enter my sanctuary, no alien whatsoever among the people of Israel, but the Levites who forsook me when Israel went astray, straying from men to follow their fetishes, shall suffer their punishment. They shall be servitors in my sanctuary, appointed over the temple gates, and performing the chores of my temple. They shall slaughter the burnt offerings and the sacrifices for the people. They shall attend on them and serve them, because they served the house of Israel in the presence of their fetishes and made them stumble into guilt. Therefore declares our Father in heaven, Elohim, I have sworn concerning them that they shall suffer their punishment. They shall not approach me to serve. They shall not approach me to serve me as priest, to come near any of my sacred offerings, the most holy things They shall bear their shame for the abominations that they committed. I will make them watchmen of the temple to perform all its chores, everything that needs to be done in it. But the Levitical priest descended from Sadat, who maintained the service of my sanctuary when the people of Israel went astray. For me, they shall approach me to minister to me. They shall stand before me to offer me fat and blood, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. They alone may enter my sanctuary, and they alone shall approach my table to minister to me, and they shall keep my charge. And when they enter the gates of the inner court, they shall wear linen vestments. They shall have nothing woolen upon them when they minister. Beside the gates of the inner court, they shall have linen turbans on their heads and linen breeches on their loins. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. When they go out to the outer court where the people are, they shall remove the vestments in which they minister and shall deposit them in the sacred chambers. They shall put on other garments, lest they make the people consecrated by contact with their vestments. They shall neither shave their heads, nor let their hair go untrimmed. They shall keep their hair trimmed. No priest shall drink wine when he enters into the inner court. They shall not marry widows or divorced women. They may marry only virgins of the stock of the house of Israel, or widows who are widows of priests. They shall declare to my people what is sacred and what is profane, and inform them what is clean and what is unclean, and lawsuits too. It is they who shall act as judges. They shall decide them in accordance with my rules. They shall preserve my teachings and my laws regarding all my fixed occasions, and they shall maintain the sanctity of my Sabbaths. A priest shall not defile himself by entering a house where there is a dead person. He shall defile himself only for father or mother, son or daughter, brother or unmarried sister, after he has become clean. 7 days shall be counted off for him, and on the day that he re-enters the inner court of the sanctuary to minister in the sanctuary, he shall present his sin offering, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. This shall be their portion, for I am their portion, and no holding shall be given them in Israel, for I am their holding. The meal offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings shall be consumed by them. Everything prescribed in Israel shall be theirs, all the choice first fruits of every kind, and other gifts of every kind of all your contributions shall go to the priest. You shall further give the first of the yield of your baking to the priest, that a blessing may rest upon your home. Priest shall not eat anything, whether bird or animal that died or was torn by beasts. When you allot the land as an inheritance, you shall set aside from the land as a gift sacred to our Father in heaven an area 2,500 cubits long and 10,000 wide. This shall be holy through its entire extent of this. A square measuring a full 500 by 500 shall be reserved for the sanctuary, and 50 cubits for an open space all around it. Of the aforesaid area you shall measure off as most holy and distant to include the sanctuary. A space 25,000 long by 10,000 wide. It is a sacred portion of the land. It shall provide space for houses. It shall provide space for houses for the priests and ministrates of the sanctuary, who are qualified to minister to our Father in heaven, as well as holy ground for the sanctuary. Another space 25,000 long by 10,000 wide shall be the property of the Levites, the servants of the temple. 20 chambers alongside the sacred reserve you shall set aside. A space 25,000 long by 5,000 wide as the property of the city. It shall belong to the whole house of Israel, and to the prince shall belong on both sides of the sacred reserve, and the property of the city, and alongside the sacred reserve, and the property of the city on the west extending westward, and on the east extending eastward, a portion corresponding to one of the tribal portions that extend from the western border to the eastern border of the land. That shall be his property in Israel. And my princes shall no more defraud my people, but shall leave the rest of the land to the several tribes of the house of Israel. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, enough princes of Israel, make an end of lawlessness and rapine, and do what is right and just. Put a stop to your evictions of my people, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. Have honest balances, an honest ephah and an honest bath. The ephah and the bath shall comprise the same volume. And ephah and the bath shall comprise the same volume. The bath 1/10 of a homer, and the ephah 1/10 of a homer. Their capacity shall be gauged by the homer, and the shekel shall weigh 20 gerahs, 20 shekels, 25 shekels, and 10 plus 5 shekels shall count with you as a minor. This is the contribution you shall make: 1/6 of an ephah from every homer of wheat, and 1/6 of an ephah from every homer of barley, while the dew from the oil being measured by the bath, shall be 1/10 of a bath from every core. As 10 baths make a homer, so 10 baths make a homer, and the dew from the flock shall be 1 animal from every 200. All these shall be contributed from Israel's products, from meal offerings, burnt offerings, and offerings of well-being, to make expiation for them, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. In this contribution The entire population must join with the prince and Israel with the burnt offerings, the meal offerings, and the libations on festivals, new moon, Sabbaths, all fixed occasions of the house of Israel shall be the obligation of the prince. He shall provide the sin offerings, the meal offerings, the burnt offerings, and the offerings of well-beings to make expiation for the house of Israel. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, on the first day of the first month you shall take a bull of the herd without blemish, and you shall cleanse the sanctuary. The priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering and apply it to the doorposts of the temple, to the four corners of the ledge of the altar, and to the doorposts of the gate of the inner court. You shall do the same on the seventh day of the month to purge the temple from uncleanness caused by unwitting or ignorant persons. On the 14th day of the first month, you shall have the Passover sacrifice. And during the festival of 7 days, unleavened bread shall be eaten. On that day, the prince shall provide a bull of sin offering on behalf of himself and of the entire population. And during the 7 days of the festival, he shall provide daily for 7 days 7 bulls and 7 rams without blemish for a burnt offering to our Father in heaven, and 1 goat daily for a sin offering. He shall provide a meal offering of an ephah for each bull, an ephah for each ram, with a hin of oil to every ephah. So too, during the festival of the 7th month, for 7 days from the 15th day on, he shall provide the same sin offerings, burnt offerings, meal offerings, and oil. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, the gate of the inner court, which faces the east, shall be closed on the 6 working days. It shall be open on the Sabbath day, and it shall be open on the day of the new moon. The prince shall enter by way of the vestibule outside the gate, and shall attend at the gatepost, while the priest sacrifices burnt offering and his offering of well-being. He shall then bow low at the threshold of the gate, and depart. The gate, however, shall not be closed until evening. The common people shall worship before our Father in heaven on Sabbaths and new moons. At the entrance of the same gate, the burnt offering which the prince presents to our Father in heaven on the Sabbath day shall consist of 6 lambs without blemish, and 1 ram without blemish, with the meal offering of an ephah for the ram, and meal offering of as much as he hopes for the lambs, and a hin of oil with every ephah. And on the day of the new moon, it shall consist of a bull of the herd without blemish, and 6 lambs and a ram. They shall be without blemish. And he shall provide a meal offering of an ephah for the bull, an ephah for the ram, and as much as he can afford for the lambs, with a hin of oil to every ephah. When the prince enters, he shall come in by way of the vestibule of the gate, and he shall go out the same way. But on the fixed occasions, when the common people come before our Father in heaven, whoever enters by the north gate to bow low shall leave by the south gate, and whoever enters by the south gate shall leave by the north gate. They shall not go back through the gate by which they came in, but shall go out by the opposite one. And as for the prince, he shall enter with them when they enter, and leave when they leave. And as for the prince, he shall enter with them when they enter, and leave when they leave. On festivals and fixed occasions, the meal offering should be an ephah for each bull, an ephah for each ram, and as much as he hopes for the lambs, with a hin of oil for every ephah. The gate that faces east shall also be open for the prince whenever he offers a free will offering, be it burnt offering or offering of well-being, freely offered to our Father in heaven, so that he may offer his burnt offering or his offering of well-being, just as he does on the Sabbath day. Then he shall leave, and the gate shall be closed. After he leaves, each day you shall offer a lamb of the first year without blemish, as a daily burnt offering to our Father in heaven. You shall offer one every morning, and every morning regularly you shall offer a meal offering with it, a 1/6 of an ephah with a 1/3 of an hin of oil to moisten the choice flour, as a meal offering to our Father in heaven, a law for all time. The lamb, the meal offering, and oil shall be presented every morning as a regular burnt offering. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, if the prince makes a gift to any of his sons, it shall become the latter's inheritance. It shall pass on to his sons. It is their holding by inheritance. But if he makes a gift from his inheritance to any of his subjects, it shall only belong to the latter until the year of release. Then it shall revert to the prince. His inheritance must by all means pass on to his sons, but the prince shall not take property away from any of the people and rob them of their holdings. Only out of his own holdings shall he endow his sons, in order that my people may not be dispossessed of their holdings. Then he led me into the passage at the side of the gate to the sacred chambers of the priests, which face north, and there at the rear of it in the west I saw a space. He said to me, this is the place where the priests shall boil the guilt offerings and the sin offerings, and where they shall bake the meal offerings, so as not to take them into the outer court and make the people consecrated. Then he led me into the outer court, and led me past the 4 corners of the court, and in each corner of the court there was an enclosure. There unroofed enclosures, each 40 cubits long and 30 wide, were in the 4 corners of the court. The four corner enclosures had the same measurements. On the inside, running around the 4 of them, there was a row of masonry equipped with hearths under the rows all around. He said to me, these are the kitchens where the temple servitors shall boil the sacrifices of the people. He led me back to the entrance of the table, and I found that water was issuing from below the platform of the temple eastward, since the temple faced east, but the water was running out of the south of the altar, under the south wall of the temple. Then he led me out by way of the northern gate, and led me around to the outside of the outer gate that faces in the direction of the east. And I found that water was gushing from under the south wall. As the man went on eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits, and led me across the water. The water was ankle deep. Then he measured off another 1,000, and led me across the water. The water was knee deep. He measured off a further 1,000, and led me across the water. The water was up to the waist. When he measured yet another 1,000, it was a stream I could not cross, for the water had swollen into a stream that could not be crossed except by swimming. Do you see, O mortal? He said to me, and he led me back to the bank of the stream. As I came back, I saw trees in great profusion on both banks of the stream. This water, he told me, runs out to the eastern region and flows into the Araba. And when it comes into the sea of foul waters, the water will become wholesome. Every living creature that swims will be able to live wherever the stream goes. Wherever the stream goes, the fish will be very abundant. Once these waters have reached there, it will be wholesome, and everything will live wherever the stream goes. Fishermen shall stand beside it all the way from En Gedi to En Egalam. It shall be a place for drying nets, and the fish will be of various kinds, and most plentiful like the fish of the great sea. But its swamps and marshes shall not become wholesome. They will serve to supply salt. All kinds of trees for food will grow up on both banks of the stream. Their leaves will not wither, nor their fruit fail. They will yield new fruit every month, because the water for them flows from the temple. Their fruit will serve for food. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. Thus said our Father in heaven, Elohim, these shall be the boundaries of the land that you shall allot to the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph shall receive 2 portions, and you shall share the rest equally. As I swore to give it to your father, so shall this land fall to you as your heritage. These are the boundaries of the land, as the northern limit from the great sea by way of Hethlon, Lebahamath, Zadad, Baratha, Sibarim, which lies between the border of Damascus and the border of Hamath, down to Hazor Hatakan, which is on the border of Haran. Thus the boundary shall run from the sea to Hazor and Anan to the north of the territory of Damascus, with the territory of Hamath to the north of it. That shall be the northern limit. As the eastern limit, a line between Haran and Damascus, and between Gilead and the land of Israel, with the Jordan as a boundary. You shall measure down to the eastern sea. That shall be the eastern limit. The southern limit shall run a line from Tamar to the waters of Merabath Kadesh, along the Wadi of Egypt, and the Great Sea. That is the southern limit. And as the western limit, the Great Sea shall be the boundary up to a point opposite level Hamath. That shall be the western limit. This land you shall divide for yourselves among the tribes of Israel. You shall allot it as a heritage for yourselves and for the strangers who reside among you, who have begotten children among you. You shall treat them as Israelite citizens. They shall receive allotments along with you among the tribes of Israel. You shall give the stranger an allotment within the... You see, he says you shall give the stranger an allotment within the tribes where he resides, because our Father in heaven, Elohim. Understand that legend. Yo, understand that, family. It says you shall give the stranger an allotment with the tribe where he resides, because our Father in heaven, Elohim. Amen. These are the names of the tribes at the northern end along the Hethlon road from Lebo Hamath to Hazar Enan, which is the border of Damascus, which with Hamath to the north from the eastern border to the sea. Dan, one tribe adjoining the territory of Dan from the eastern border to the western border. Asher, one adjoining the territory of Asher from the eastern border to the western border. Naphtali, one adjoining the territory of Naphtali from the eastern border to the western border. Manasseh, one adjoining the territory of Manasseh from the eastern border to the western border. Ephraim, one adjoining the territory of Ephraim from the eastern border to the western border. Reuben, one adjoining the territory of Reuben from the eastern border to the western border. Judah, one adjoining the territory of Jehudah from the eastern border to the western border, shall be the reserve that you set aside 25,000 cubits in breadth and in length, equal to one of the portions from the east border to the western border. The sanctuary shall be in the middle of it. The reserve that you set aside for our Father in heaven shall be 25,000 long and 10,000 wide. It shall be a portion. It shall be a portion to the following. The sacred reserve for the priest shall measure 25,000 cubits on the north, 10,000 on the west, 10,000 on the east, and 25,000 on the south, with our Father in heaven sanctuary in the middle of it. This consecrated area shall be for the priest of the line of Zadok, who kept my charge and did not go astray, as the Levites did when the people of Israel went astray. It shall be a special reserve for them out of the total reserve from the land most holy adjoining the territory of the Levites alongside the territory of the priests. The Levites shall have an area 25,000 long by 10,000 wide. The total length shall be 25,000 and the breadth 10,000. None of it, the choices of the land, may be sold, exchanged, or transferred. It is sacred to our Father in heaven. The remaining 5,000 in breadth by 25,000 shall be for common use, serving the city for dwellings and pasture. The city itself shall be in the middle of it, and these shall be its measurements. On the north side, 4,500 cubits. On the south side, 4,500. On the east side, 4,500. On the west side, 4,500. The pasture shall extend 250 cubits to the north of the city, 250 to the south, 250 to the east, and 250 to the west. As for the remaining 10,000 to the east and 10,000 to the west, adjoining the long side of the sacred reserve, the produce of these areas adjoining the sacred reserve shall serve as food for the workers in the city. The workers in the city from all the tribes of Israel shall cultivate it. The entire reserve, 25,000 square, you shall set aside as the sacred reserve, plus the city property, what remains on either side of the sacred reserve, and the city property shall belong to the prince. The prince shall own the land from the border of the 25,000 of the reserve up to the eastern border, and from the border of the 25,000 of the west up to the western boundary corresponding to the tribal portions. The sacred reserve, with a temple sanctuary in the middle of it, and the property of the Levites and city property as well, shall be in the middle of the area belonging to the prince. The rest of the land between the territory of Jehudah and the territory of Benjamin shall belong to the prince. As for the remaining tribes from the eastern border to the western border, Benjamin 1, adjoining the territory of Benjamin from the eastern border to the western border, Simeon 1, adjoining the territory of Simeon from the eastern border to the western border, Issachar 1, adjoining the territory of Issachar from the eastern border to the western border, Zebulun 1, adjoining the territory of Zebulun from the eastern border to the western border, Gad 1. The other border of Gad shall be the southern boundary. This boundary shall run from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh to the Wadi of Egypt and to the Great Sea. That is the land which you shall allot as a heritage to the tribes of Israel, and those are their portions, declares our Father in heaven, Elohim. And these are the exits from the city on its northern side, measuring 4,500 cubits. The gates of the city shall be the 3 gates on the north, named for the tribes of Israel: the Reuben gate, 1 the Judah gate, 1 the Levi gate, 1 on the eastern side, measuring 4,500 cubits. There shall be 3 gates: the Joseph gate, on the Benjamin gate, 1 and the Dan gate, 1 on the southern side, measuring 4,500 cubits. There shall be 3 gates: the Simeon gate, 1 the Issachar gate, 1 and the Zebulun gate, 1. And on the western side, measuring 4,500 cubits, there shall be 3 gates: the Gad gate, 1 the Asher gate, 1 the Naphtali gate, 1. The circumference shall be 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that day on shall be Our Father in heaven is there. Amen. May our Father and the Son and the Spirit be with us. That's the book of Ezekiel. If Father willing, I'm going to get into at least 3 or 4 sets.